The Polaroid PDC 2070, ahead of its time. £2.99 street photography beast. Okay, so I'm taking the piss. Obviously, this is not by any calculation a good camera, but there are two things that I want to explore, and this camera is going to help me do that. The emerging trend in using crap OG digital point and shoot cameras for their aesthetic, and two, when did digital cameras become all round good enough? I think it's fascinating that the look of the 2000s point and shoot is one that people are striving for. I get it. It was nearly 5 years ago that I was using an early 90s point and shoot film camera, but there's a bit of a difference between a film point and shoot from the 90s and a digital point and shoot from less than a decade later. Film in the 90s was at its peak. It was about as mature as it was ever seriously going to get. A 35mm point and shoot has the same quality capture ability as any other 35mm film camera. The only real difference is the lens, and we as humans have been doing lenses for quite some time. It's possible to make a half-decent lens pretty easily and pretty cheaply. The state of digital in the early aughts was not there yet in any way, measurable or not. I think it's maybe when we hit 12 megapixels or over on cameras that shoot RAW, on like an APS-C or above size sensor, that digital properly began to mature. So I've unboxed it. It takes AAAs. There's no way I'm f***ing with the ones that came in the box. I have legitimately never seen this kind of storage media before. It's a smart storage card. It's huge, but it's really flat. It feels like a credit card. So let's see if it even turns on. So it turns on, which is, it wasn't a given. It wasn't a given. And I've actually taken it to the park today with the dogs and got all these photos. To take you through the process of actually shooting with it. It's really slow, and every time you turn it on, you have to like set the settings again. I want to adjust the exposure. I have to go in, select it, and there's either a 30-second, a 90-second, 30-second, 60-second, or 90-second timeout where it'll just turn itself off. So if you set your settings, exposure, go back in the menu, set white balance, outdoor, go back in the settings, set the sharpness to soft, then you're ready to shoot, and it takes a little while. So let's go find some flowers. I don't think it has any sort of autofocus. I think it seems to be just fixed, and you kind of press the shutter. You get one beep, and you sort of have to hold still. The preview's awful. You can see it on here. The options for the image size are high, middle, and low. You can also Millie. You can also shoot video, which Doesn't look amazing, but it's relatively responsive. It's quite a tight frame. So this is what you get out of the video. But there's something quite nice about the quality of photos that come out of it. I was fully ready to say that this is a piece of shit and the whole trend of shooting on old point and shoot cameras was trash. But this really feels like the digital version of the Holga. And I really like the Holga, but it's just so expensive to use because you have to buy medium format film and get it developed. The last development was £18. Ridiculous. This, on this ridiculous card, takes 50 pictures, and I don't think they need editing. I think that the look stands for itself, and I might actually carry on using this camera. The next part of the equation is how far back in time could I go and still get a usable digital camera? I bought my first Pro DSLR back in 2011, and it was the 12 megapixel full frame Nikon D700. I followed that purchase up with the purchase of the Fuji X100 a year later. Looking back, my editing style might not have held up, but the images still do. The editing style can be attributed to the trends of the time, so I make no apologies for that. The reason I put 12 megapixels as the threshold, or at least the reason it came to mind, is that this camera, the one that I'm recording on now, the Sony A7S III, is a modern camera with 12 megapixels. There are plenty of people arguing that this isn't enough, and it may well be the case for some uses, but for general use it stands up against anything really. But that's not the only reason. I've done print shows with the images from the Fuji and the D700, both 12 megapixels, and I've created 300 by 300 photo books for loads of weddings with those cameras too. Maybe you could go back further, but then you potentially begin to run into handling issues and poor autofocus, weird media, that kind of thing. If you're a commercial photographer, this is your business, you want reliable, normal media, you want reliable cameras, you want stuff that's easily available and it's not, well used. But that's not to say you can't go back further. My photos with the first DSLR that I used look pretty decent too. I borrowed a Nikon D200 for a trip to Malta, and although the camera only has a 10.2 megapixel CCD sensor, the images look good, if not great. Much better than the camera I owned at the time, which was a Samsung point and shoot. The thing to remember is that cameras that looked good in their day will not look any worse now. GX Ace said it best for me, and I'm going to paraphrase him, but it's not like a computer from the same time period. They don't age the same, they don't become redundant. In the end though, it all depends on your use and your prerogative. There are people that won't settle for less than the most up-to-date camera. Often this is more of a status thing, but I'm not going to tar everyone with that same brush. There are legitimate reasons to want the newest and the best. More importantly though, is to remember that photography is an artistic medium, and as such, the best tool is the one that aids you in conveying your message. Maybe it's the one you're most comfortable with, maybe it's the one that aesthetically fits the best. If finger painting, which is arguably the oldest medium, can be raised to a high art form, then a point and shoot from the noughties is just as valuable as an R5 or even an IQ 150. If you don't know what either of those are, look them up. That's it though. Goodbye.